Hey, hello. Welcome
Hello.
to Live at Epiphan. It is Thursday at 3 o'clock, and we are here, Matt and I, to discuss something interesting that probably has to do with live streaming, as we often do every Thursday here live at Epiphan. But in all seriousness, today we are talking about um, virtual classrooms and various different things related to that. So,
Yes.
welcome, Matt. You're looking
Thank you. Thank
fancy
you.
in your home office there.
My thank you. And my little update for Corona haircut as well. So just keeping things up. So today we're really going to be talking about kind of getting started with video production at home for the lecture capture industry. We're going to talk a little bit about simple setups. We're also going to talk about a little bit more advanced setups as well, and just some tips and tricks and things to keep in mind as you're progressing through this, maybe for you, new and uncharted territory.
Yeah, and in some ways, this is a little bit of a summary of a webinar we did a couple of weeks ago. So if you didn't have a chance to check out that webinar, I highly recommend it. We have a short clip from our guest who was on that webinar with us. And so that one's generally very interesting. He is someone who works in a university who is under the gun to produce and deal with basically exactly what we're talking about today. And so he shared some great insights with us during that webinar. So if you want, you can check out all of our back catalog of webinars and all the future ones coming up. We're usually doing 2 a week, sometimes one, sometimes more. It depends. But you can check out epiphan.com/webinars and you'll see all the upcoming stuff we have scheduled already and the back catalog of stuff. There's some awesome content there. So check that out. And if you want to register for any of those or check out the back ones, definitely do that. So let's kind of jump into this. So obviously, like many of us, all over the world right now, people are trying to adapt to new ways of creating content. Now, obviously, within an education institution, that means classes, that means teaching. And while similar, there are some unique challenges with it that we're going to try to cover, and there's also a ton of different ways of doing it. So if you haven't done this yet, hopefully this gives you some guidelines and some tools.
Right. And we're not just talking about the live stream aspects of it. We're going to also talk about it from a recording perspective as well, because not everyone is necessarily comfortable or capable of doing this as a live stream medium. Maybe you don't have the network available to support that type of to streaming protocols. So having an option for being able to record that content to later put onto the internet or onto a school system is probably another more less nerve wracking approach to being able to do that. So let's talk
Yeah,
about some of those key requirements.
yeah, and I think in general, one of the things that to keep in mind here is that there was already a big push within the education industry. Everything from K through 12, as they say in America, or elementary school, as they say here in Canada, into secondary school and into post-secondary university and colleges to really accelerate the move to do things online. And the current situation with COVID and everything like that has only accelerated that to a crazy pace. And I suspect in a big way, we're probably not going to go back from it entirely. I think that the pace that we've seen since it was already a trend is going to continue. And so, given the current circumstances, I think it's important to consider some of the key points we're going to cover, not just for now, not just for the next however long we're in isolation in many places in the world, but going forward. And maybe it should be time to make some investments for the long term and help you in the now. So, key requirements. Where are we at with that?
Well, we've got a few different things that we need to consider first. The first and most important thing is what sort of AV gear you have either accessible to you already or that you need to maybe look at in terms of investing. So, we're going to be talking a little bit more about the cameras, microphones, and audio gear, if there's any peripheral devices that you might need to use. And if you've got all of those devices in place already, or if you have something on the way, we also need to think about ways of being able to capture all of that content so that you can either display it live or be able to record that content so that you can provide it to your audiences later. So typically, you're going to need something like an encoder, and there's different measures of that, right?
Yeah.
Software, if you're using something like OBS or Wirecast or vMix versus a hardware solution, maybe using in conjunction with a streaming software like a USB capture card, or if you're using a dedicated hardware platform, maybe something like Pearl as an example.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, there's multiple layers to this. There's, of course, the tools that are in the hands of the teacher, the professor, the content creator, all the way down the chain into thinking about IT infrastructure. Also, where does this go? Do you already have some sort of content management system, video portal solution for the school, or is that something that you're just getting into for the first time as well? And so there's a lot of different kind of ways to look at it. So let's start with the absolute basics in terms of the gear that you might want to consider. I think this one is the most basic, and honestly, this is exactly what I'm doing right now for this
Yep.
show, which is using a webcam connected to a computer. In my case, it's a desktop instead of a laptop, but same idea,
Mhm.
and an external microphone. This is the absolute minimum basic, I think, in terms of quality. And you'll notice that we're not recommending here, even in the most basic, of using a built-in microphone on either the webcam or the laptop, because they're generally terrible. It's worth the extra small investment to use a good quality external microphone. I myself am using a Blue Yeti Nano,
Mhm.
but there's obviously tons of options out there. Matt has much more sophisticated audio gear
I do.
at his disposal, being a huge audio nerd. So he's got professional mics going into professional audio capture devices and stuff like that, which is also a great choice for sure. And again, you need to look at the budgeting, but the main thing here is make sure that you have really good quality audio. Video you can kind of get away with to an extent, but audio, bad audio is just, it's not forgivable and will completely ruin the learning experience and the engagement from the people you're trying to reach and the students. If they can't hear you, or it's tinny or it's echoey or whatever the case may be, it really disengages people. So
Absolutely.
that's a big consideration, even at the most basic setup.
But sometimes we can look at advancing that setup a little bit more. So I talked a little bit about maybe using something like a USB capture card if you're going to be using streaming, either recording software or streaming software. The great thing about these little guys is most of the cards that you're going to be buying today are going to be what's known as UVC compliant. So this means there's no drivers to install. They worked in the exact same way as an external webcam. You plug in USB directly to your computer, and it creates this beautiful video input so that you can connect your camera directly to your computer.
Yeah, and the biggest advantage doing it this way is that you can then graduate, if you will, to a higher quality camera. Although
Hmm.
I am not using it today because I only took delivery of it today, is an example at the low end. This Sony A5100 that just got delivered about an hour ago, so I didn't have a chance to get it all set up and configured in time for this show. Um, but when you move into that, you move into a higher quality camera, whether it's a mirrorless camera like the A5100 or a handycam camcorder style. You're going to get something that's going to perform better in poor lighting conditions, that has better focus, just overall much higher quality. So, that's an important thing to consider and to look at. And of course, make sure that it has a clean live HDMI signal like the A5100 does, so you can feed it into a capture card to kind of upgrade that video quality.
Now, if you
The
don't want
other
to look
thing,
at it, sorry, go ahead, George.
yeah, I mean, the other thing, of course, is even when you're doing that, that still doesn't fill the audio role.
Right. And when we're talking about audio, there's a couple of different avenues that you can take. If you've got a more updated camera, especially something like a camcorder or a prosumer or a professional camera, 9 times out of 10, they've also got a microphone input that you can also add a camera directly to that.
Yeah, the 850-100 actually doesn't, which is why it's more at the low end, but
Hmm.
you can go a little higher. You could go to something like what we use in our production in our studio a lot, the A63 or 6400, and it does have audio inputs. But sometimes one of the best ways to tackle the audio in these scenarios is to use a wireless a lavalier microphone.
Yep.
Um, the big advantage of using a higher quality camera and sticking it on a tripod is it opens up your space more. You're not as tied to your desk with the limited focal range that a webcam offers you. You can really open it up more because those better cameras are just better at shooting a bigger space. But if you're shooting a bigger space, it means that, I mean, on the plus side, it means you get to move around. The downside of moving around is that audio could be trickier. Using a
Absolutely.
wireless lav mic clipped to you means that you have the more freedom of movement when you clip it on right and it's not rubbing on anything. Um, and being wireless, if you go that road, there's wired lavs, but if you go wireless, then you could be across the room and have no issue. And so that's an important thing to look at if you're going to go to the more advanced setup. Is try to free yourself up and use the space that you might have to your advantage.
Now, if you're not going to be connecting that lab directly to your camera, the other ways of getting that in, if you're not using a USB style audio source, is you're going to need what's called an audio capture card. So, in the same way that there's USB based capture cards for video, there are USB audio interfaces that can also be used. M Audio was very popular in the early 2000s and into the mid 2000s. The most popular name that we have for USB capture cards today is Focusrite, and they're smaller investments. They don't have to spend a significant amount of money. Some of them are as inexpensive as about $150, and they give you one or two inputs to connect to your audio sources. You can adjust the gain to make sure that it's loud enough to hear, and then it goes into your computer. The beauty to that, which you can extend beyond that, is you can connect speakers to that output of that Focusrite or that USB audio card that you're using, and then use that entirely as your audio for your entire computer. So you have
Yeah,
total control over your system in a very professional manner. And it doesn't have
yeah.
to cost you a fortune.
Oh, absolutely. And it also, that those types of devices give you the option of bringing in other audio signals as well. Maybe you
Mhm.
need to, who knows, bring in an instrument or something like that. Those types of audio devices give you that flexibility in a very easy way. Um, in any case, once you've kind of decided how you want to create this content, we need to do something with it. And that's really where, we might be doing it VOD. We might want to do it live, and there's different considerations. But let's focus on creating VOD content.
Right. So creating VOD content is great because it takes all the pressure about performance off of you. You don't have 1,000 people watching. You're not doing a live show like you and I are doing today, George. And it gives you the time to really pace how you want to record that content. If you make a mistake or you feel like maybe you were being a little bit too silly or too serious, you can delete that recording and start over.
Yeah, you can get a mulligan out of it if you need to. You can kind of go back and fix it in post, if you will. And that can help. Or just throw it out and start over. Live is a whole other challenge and dynamic, as we all know. But VOD, again, it allows you to maybe mix in other assets. So there's the capture of that doesn't really change whether you're doing VOD or live necessarily. The
Mhm.
same rules generally apply if you're looking to minimize the amount of post production that you're trying to do. So, yeah, I guess we can kind of
But I
look at
mean,
ways of doing this.
But I mean, if we're talking about minimizing post production, the best way to do that would be to make sure that you're using a software that can kind of set up those different scenes for you before you start recording. So if you're looking for something like a picture in picture to be able to provide a PowerPoint presentation with a video shot of yourself, using software that can create those specific scenes before hitting record is an excellent option. Now, if you're not comfortable with using software, you always have the option of going back to basics and just pressing record on your specific camera in a very simple recording software. The problem, of course, with that is you still have to go into software and then edit all of that content at a later date.
Yeah.
So, the more simple you can keep this for yourself, probably the more fun you're going to have at the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly. So, how do we create this? I guess there's a few different ways of doing this. And depending on where you are, and certainly I think for current conditions, this varies a lot. But I think in general, going forward, there's a number of different ways of dealing with it. Currently, with a lot of campus closures, you're probably going to try and do it from home.
Mhm.
In which case, make do and just try to get it done as quickly and as easily as possible. But some places and some campuses, one example is Thomas More in Belgium. they can actually allow limited number of people at a certain schedule to go into their on-campus studios. And so we have a little example of that and a clip from Tom at Thomas More, who we're going to play here in a moment, that is going to talk a little bit about how they use it. But having a dedicated studio space, especially long term, is really going to help enable the creation of VOD content, not just for teachers, instructors, professors, but also for students. So that's a big thing to look at, and probably want to dedicate a lot of resources to making sure that studio is easy to use and is powerful and flexible.
Mhm.
So let's take a look at that clip that we had from Tom.
In this studio, we make knowledge videos for teachers so they can enhance their digital course with video content. Also, we make web lectures from courses that has been going on, and we can provide this video content to students, and especially to students with disabilities. We make use of video, like web lectures, for remote projects. And also, it's very important, it's in our strategy and our mission, that we provide videos to courses for students with disabilities. So if they have to go a day to the hospital, so they can see the lesson that has been given that day, and they can follow it.
Yeah, so some great short examples there. Obviously, Tom could go on and on forever about how they're doing that at Thomas More, but one of the great examples of that is even in some of their smaller classrooms and breakout rooms, they're using a Pearl Mini as a hardware encoder in order to simplify a lot of the production for recording and or for live streaming, depending on what they need in a given situation. Pearl Mini makes it easy because they can start and stop their events and their different needs by one person using the touchscreen on the hardware encoder, and they don't have to necessarily know a whole lot of complex configuration like you might get with software like an OBS, Wirecast, or vMix, and they don't have to worry about having powerful computers and provisioning all those to people or having shared machines. Perl strips all of that away and
Right.
and does everything that it does on its own. So they've been doing this for a long time at Thomas
Mhm.
More. This is something they've been doing pre-pandemic, and it's actually been a huge benefit to them in the current situation where Belgium, like many places, has been on virtual lockdown, and no one's allowed on campus without special permission. But they've been able to enable their teachers through some of the kits like we've been talking about, or in some cases, if those instructors don't have suitable stuff at home, ship them a Pearl Mini to their home pre-configured so that all
Right.
they have to do is plug it in and push go, essentially, and that can be a big thing.
Yeah, and he
um,
also brings up a very good point in that little video. So if you guys are paying attention, they were talking about accessibility, and one of the reasons that we talk about why this virtual classroom, this recording and online world of education is here to stay, is to provide that accessibility for people that may have disabilities, for people who may be sick, who may need to
Absolutely.
go to different environments that don't have access to that content right away. It's an excellent resource that allows people to learn at different paces as well. So being mindful of that, outside of our current situation is also important to understand that as technology improves, so do teaching methods.
Absolutely. Yeah, but of course, one of the biggest challenges I think of doing any sort of virtual online education is that, you know and one of the reasons why it hasn't been around forever is the fact that you may not get the same experience as you would in the classroom, at least traditionally. I
Mhm.
think technology has brought us to a point, using all the tools we've been talking about, really enables as close to a classroom level of interaction, or experience for the remote participant, the student, as possibly can be. So yeah, there's some great ways to look at it, and again, sometimes it's using something like a Pearl Mini or specific software that's built for using multiple camera angles, as well as bringing in external content, bringing in high quality audio, and getting all of that, streamed and recorded.
But you want to try to keep it as simple as you can under the budget and the kind of the limitations that you have. The more external pieces you're adding into the mix, the more chances there are of you running into a hiccup or an issue that you need to either resolve on the fly, or that you just need to troubleshoot or wait to replace an additional piece of equipment in the future. So being mindful of keeping it simple, finding out what the best tools are for the job based on the budget that you have. And sometimes that means if you don't have access to a camera, but you have access to a small budget to get adapters and you can use software, even just being able to use a cell phone that has a good quality video camera, and then using something like a dedicated arm that you can put your cell phone on, and then using an adapter and a capture card to get that into your computer is enough to give you just that elevated production quality to give you a more in classroom, comfortable, professional environment.
Yeah, and I think from people just starting out, they could even be leveraging social media type platforms like YouTube
Mhm.
to deliver that content. If the school doesn't already have an existing infrastructure for this content, using social media can be great. Ideally, though, especially long term, we want to start looking at dedicated platforms and more specialized equipment that's going to improve the overall experience. If we take something like a Pearl Mini that directly integrates with content management systems like Panopto and Kaltura, they can almost become automated boxes, which can really help.
Yep. And if you're not sure what that is, basically you can set it and forget it. You can have someone that's on the IT team basically create a schedule, plug in all of that information, and all you have to do is walk into that dedicated virtual classroom and start teaching. There's no start or stop button that needs to take place, and it just simplifies the entire process
Yeah,
end to end.
just show up on time. That's basically.
Yeah, that's kind of important.
uh, but there's these platforms do offer software solutions as well that you can install on a computer and use things like capture cards. So even if it's maybe not in the realm right now to equip everybody with a Pearl Mini, although that would be great,
Mhm.
um, that may not be possible out of the gate. So using a mixed environment where, and this is exactly what Thomas More does, they have a lot of Pearl Minis that they put in certain classrooms, certain studios, and in certain people's hands right now at home. But most of the people that are continuing to teach from home have installed the software on their computers and are just using either webcams or capture cards to bring in that in. The nice part is that if you have these content management systems deployed, it means everything is stored there. Everything is aggregated there. Class schedules are there. The access controls for what students should be viewing, what content, it's all there that you can create, and that can be a huge advantage to control and manage all of the media you're generating. So those can be great things. And again, a Perl automatically linking to these types of platforms means you can bring in even better quality video and audio and automate things, set up predefined schedules, as we said. So those are some of the great things to look at. And looking at these platforms means that you're going to have a base for a long-term solution, not just now for what we need in the current conditions, but forever essentially, which can
Mhm.
grow your student base. I think one of the big struggles that we're starting to see, especially within universities and colleges, is that the students they're getting are increasingly from far and wide, international students or whatever, and that's a good thing. It grows the student population, but I think there's going to be more and more limits on travel, but you still may want to attend that school. And I think in the not too distant future, we're going to see a lot more purely online offerings from universities through these kind of platforms and tools, and that's really exciting. If you want to attend a school on the other side of the world entirely online, which traditionally hasn't really been possible, and I think we are moving that direction.
but just be mindful of those time zones. And I know that we put a lot of focus here on universities and colleges, but you are not limited by that at all. Anybody K through 12 can also take advantage of the online, lecture capture industry as well. Platforms like Moodle for LMSs have been popular with K through 12 um, institutions for a very long time for being able to manage already pre-recorded content. So if you're going with a VOD method, maybe your school is already using something like that. And if you guys are curious to know a little bit more, we have done some past webinars about how to get started with the virtual classroom. We encourage you to check some of those out. We've also got a lot of blog post information available if you want a little bit more information on things like, some of the best cameras that you might find available or content that you might be needing.
Exactly. I am looking at chat. So if anyone has questions or anything, please feel free to throw that into chat. Mostly there's just discussions about your at-home haircut, Matt.
That's fair.
That's about all. But I am going to put a link to some YouTube videos you might want to check out for further reading, if you will. So I'll throw that link into chat. But yeah, so definitely throw us your questions. We're happy to address those. I hope this has given a quick overview. Like I said, the webinar we did previously was a lot more in depth. And certainly we don't time limit our webinars this way. We try to keep these episodes a little shorter. So if you want the long-winded version, then check out the webinar stuff. And thank you for checking this out. Next week's episode is actually somewhat related to this because a lot of people are choosing to use video conferencing for small classrooms where you fit within the constraints of managing video conferencing like Zoom. So next week, we're going to be talking about Zoom audio tips and how to improve that. So that is pretty related to what we were talking about today in terms of improving audio quality for any online kind of platform. As I mentioned, the webinars off the top, in case you joined us late and missed that, we have been doing a lot of webinars. So check out the list of past webinars, coming webinars at epiphan.com/webinars. Make sure we put a link in chat for that as well. And of course, as always, like, follow, and subscribe Epiphan Video on Facebook, YouTube. We do stream on Twitch as well, but that's not a huge platform for us. That's mostly for fun. So check all of that out. And yeah, join us next week where we'll dive in more. Always, you can reach out to us on email, live chat, or whatever with any questions you have about virtual classrooms and just general streaming stuff. Questions about Pearl.
And if you have questions about some of our products that you're either maybe using already or interested in learning a little bit more about, we also have our community blog, or community forums, I should say.
We do have a blog too, and there's a lot of information up there. I saw that that was posted in chat as well. So tons and tons of information out there, guys. And we're going to continue to make more of that information available to assist everyone. So I think the last thing here is hopefully this link will go into chat. It didn't translate to a clickable one, but oh well.
We'll work on correcting that.
Yeah, I'll try and fix that later. Copy paste, man. Copy paste. Anyway, thanks everyone for joining us. Thanks, Matt. And we will see you next week. Bye, everybody.
Take care, guys.